Hey everybody, welcome back to the Pixelists, the podcast about all the nerdy things we love and enjoy. As always, we're your hosts. I'm Will. That's Blake. All right, my brain.
You might think this is a running gag, but I was actually just telling my wife about people who are great at directions and those who are not. And she was like, well, who would be an example of someone who's not good at directions? And I was like, my friend Will, unfortunately. So,
well, all right, that is very true. But do you think this has to do with that? I guess it does.
Yeah, left and right.
But
sure.
it's because it's like mirrored like two different times. So I always get confused.
I get it.
Yeah. But yeah, we're here today to talk about some Critical Role.
Yeah,
and
baby.
It's Thursday, so it's Critical Role day. So we got, I don't know, every Thursday I wake up a little bit, the sun shines a little brighter. So
that's like me on Tuesdays. We've talked about this. Tuesday has a nice little just pep in the step on that day.
For any particular reason or just?
Well, because, back in the day, it was WoW Reset Day.
Oh, yeah.
And so I think it was also Destiny Reset Day, which maybe it still is. I can't remember.
Yeah.
But we're talking like 10 years of like Pavlovian joy that's like built into my weekly schedule. So like I just can't help but wake up on a Tuesday and be like, nice.
That checks out.
So
yeah, Rocco.
Yeah.
All right, yeah. Where am I right now? What are we talking about? I did the intro. Is there anything else we need to say?
The Diablo Season 1 started today.
Oh yeah.
Haven't jumped in yet, but a little detail for you guys. And Worlds Beyond Number, the latest episode dropped this past Tuesday. It's a good one. Have you listened to any of it yet?
Have you finished it?
I haven't finished it, but it is pretty good.
I heard it was good.
So, yeah.
So
I guess let's dive in.
Yeah, I guess that's all we got.
It's like, what do I do with my hands? This was so quick.
Go ahead.
I was just going to transition if that's good with you.
Do it.
All right. Well, whenever we jump into one of our Critical Role discussions, we always like to do a little bit of a recap just because they're about 4-hour long episodes. So if you're watching just the recap, we do cut this out and put it as a separate video. And then down in the episode description, we have the link to our full thoughts. And we want to know your full thoughts as well for this episode. But having said that, this was episode number 65. You know the name?
A Path of Vengeance.
A Path of Vengeance. And this episode opens up with our guest characters having recently departed. And the party kind of takes a moment to have a little bit of a more intimate conversation of like, okay, we kind of know the facts of what happened, but like, vibe check. How's everybody doing? And much that has been memed and joked about the trauma that team AOL went through. There's a bit of, I think it's F.C.G or someone's like, all right, let's go. And Ashton's like, we've been through some stuff. Like, we can't just like in a very peppy way, just get going. Laudna especially is like, it was very hard and traumatic for us. And there's a little bit of a back and forth on like, well, like, are you guys good? Like, what needs to happen? And finally, what the party settles on is, led by Ashton, we really need a day to kind of decompress, take care of some business, check a couple of boxes, and then we can continue on our way. Also, additionally, another reason that they need to take another day is because Imogen's staff doesn't have enough charges to it to actually teleport them anyway. So the party decides to split up and all take care of business separately. We have Imogen and Laudna, who are going to go check on Zadana. We have F.C.G and Ashton, who are going to go check on Milo. And then the remaining three, Chetney, Fern, and Oram, are going to go check in with Ajit Dial is that the right name? Ajit?
Yeah.
At the Dial Hall.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, right. All of a sudden, I was like, wait, is it named after him? Threw me for a second. So, first things first, Ashton and F.C.G head over to Milo's place, and Ashton's going to give Milo basically a note for some kind of a modification to his hammer. And basically says, hey, like, how fast can you get this done? And Milo's like, if it's a rush job, maybe by tomorrow afternoon. And Ashton's like, okay, great. You know, we're here for another day anyway. And he pays him 100 gold for this custom job on his hammer. Around this time, FCG is making some small talk with him and is like, hey, so like, what's your take on everything? And Ashton basically says, you know, through what they've been through in Asilra recently, it's really made them think about things and think about the world and think about their place in it, and has kind of like given them a new outlook on life. To which FCG shares that they really admire Ashton and admire this newfound sense of purpose from them. Separately, we have Imogen and Laudna, who head to Zudana's house, and Zudana is happy to see them, still has their spare room for them, and the two of them basically offer to get her some groceries and really just kind of try to help her around the place. Before they depart, though, Imogen and Laudna finally have a moment, just the two of them, and Laudna sort of confesses that she feels like a terrible person because of what they went through in Asilra, but especially her killing Bordor. She asks Imogen, like, am I a bad person? And Imogen, interestingly enough, not able to read Laudna's thoughts, finally asks, can I kiss you? And they have this very sweet moment. The table erupts in amazement as they kiss one another, and they sort of reflect on like where they've come from and where they're going. Laudna admits that she thinks Delilah's back, that she welcomed Delilah back in, and that she feels guilty for this because they went through so much to get rid of Delilah. And Imogen says, we can get rid of it. Together we will. And Laudna basically says, well, I don't know if I want to because we might need this power. And Imogen admits that she's also had reservations about getting rid of this whole Ruidus plan because the power is very tempting. They move on to get groceries, and it's out in the streets of Dressar that they come across this fountain with a crowd of people gathered around it, and this ethereal projection of Ludinus, who is sort of preaching to the crowd and advising them to sort of cast off the burdens of the gods and essentially join up with them. Some guards rush in and destroy this little device, this crystal beacon of some kind. I think Imogen and Laudna take like a fragment of it as well before bringing the groceries back to Zidana's house. And then finally, the last group, the three who went to meet with Ajit Dial, they meet up with them outside of the hall and basically are like, hey, give us the lowdown. Like, what's been happening here? They find out that the leader of Ank'Harel, Sanam
Jaman Sa'ord.
Jaman Sanor, thank you, had been here in Dressar, and that essentially a lot of these leaders are getting together and they are bound to go to the Hellcatch Valley, and they're trying to do so as one banner. Ajit talks about they've even involved the Stratos Throne, trying to get them to help as well, but there are rumors around Dressar about the Stratos Throne actually being behind this whole thing. Conspiracies, doomsayers talking about there's another coming calamity, and Ajit basically says that if things aren't done soon, he's fearful of there even being violence and mayhem in the streets. They ask Ajit if he knows anyone who could possibly look at the harness that they picked up from Alesmir, and Ajit comes out with a mentor of his, though I can't remember the name, who effectively looks at the item and eventually says, this is so interesting, I have no idea what it is, and then asks to leave to go finish his soup. The party then decides, okay, we've gotten some good information, and as they begin heading back to meet up, they want to stop by one of the temples in Dressar. But on the way, they catch the smell of a meat pie, which Matt describes to Chetney as the best smelling meat pie he's ever experienced. He has to make a wisdom saving throw and then presumably fails before launching into a full gallop towards the location of this meat pie. He turns a corner and finds a small, either halfling or gnome. I can't quite remember, maybe
It's
dwarf,
yeah, dwarf.
who throws this pouch of uh, like an herb almost that he bites into, and then throws a net of silver over him before Fern, in pursuit, winds the corner and casts blight on him. And that is where we go to break.
Yeah, so yeah, I imagined it like catnip for werewolves.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
yeah, for sure.
so we pick back up after the break with this encounter basically going on. We have a dwarf bounty hunter essentially who is yelling at Fern to stay back, like this is my business, like just stay out of it. And like Blake said, Fern just immediately casts blight on this dude and we roll initiative. So as combat goes on, Chetney is basically trying to get out of this silver net, but he's struggling. And the dwarf explains that there's a large bounty on Chet's head, basically, and that Chet is a problematic cursed beast. Beast, excuse me. The dwarf, again, having Chetney in a net, is able to kind of dart away into an alley, dragging Chetney behind him. Um, when Fern begs, basically just like, "Oh, well, just let me give him a goodbye kiss, please," and she rolls a 28
Yeah.
on the roll. So the dwarf is like, "Okay, like say your goodbyes, I guess." Um, so she runs up and kisses Chet, casting stone skin on him in the process. And the dwarf just then continues to drag Chetney away. Meanwhile, Orem is attacking the net, trying to get Chet out. But the dwarf casts Charm Person on Orem and is successful. So Orem now regards, this guy as a friend. Um, it's at this point that Chetney, or excuse me, Fern sends Mister up to Chetney, and using Mister is able to bamf Chetney out of the net. Chet immediately casts invisibility, and the dwarf scurries into the shadows as he's starting to look a bit rough from just the damage they've all been doing to him during this process. Orem, still under the charm person spell, is like trying to mediate, being like, "Why are we attacking each other, guys? We're all friends." Um, and Chet is kind of briefly explaining what just happened there, and we're told that this was in reference to the shopkeeper that Chetney attacked the last time they were in Drusar.
Forever ago.
Yeah, forever ago. Um, and Orem does a perception check while they're kind of talking in this alleyway and can see that the dwarf is on one of the nearby roofs watching them. And Orem is like, "Hey, friend, like, we never got your name." And the dwarf just runs away. The trio then decide, like, okay, like, that was crazy, but we don't have time to, like, dilly dally here. And so they make their way to the Dusk Maven's temple. So they go inside, and there's one figure inside, kind of wearing, dark robes and a hood, and I think a veil even as well. And Orem just says, "Hey, we have a lot of questions about everything going on." And this priest says, yeah, everything's kind of messed up right now, and the fear you are feeling is felt by everyone. And Fern asks, "Have you been in communication with the Raven Queen, with the Dusk Maven?" And the figure says, "The gods are in the same boat as we are. They're there's not like a direct communication, but there's communication in ways, and they're just trying to survive like we are, and our fates are intertwined with theirs." So they kind of have this mini conversation, and then this priest basically offers them to drink of the waters that are in this temple. There's like this pool of water, and the three of them agree to it. And so they each take some of this water. And it's very cold but refreshing. And they kind of just like sit and meditate almost. An amount of time passes, but they're not aware how long. Could have been a minute, could have been an hour, but they like are still. And when they like look to or come to from this, the figure is gone, and it's just the three of them in this chamber. So they're like, okay, and they decide to make their way out. Except when they open the door, it's not Drusar that they are greeted with. It is instead the Hellcatch Valley, the excavation site, the Malleus Key. Still, plummeting its beam into Ruidus. but all they can hear is just this scream, and they can see the black orb that's in the Malleus key. And it's a scream that doesn't stop and is described as echoing through Exandria. The doors then close, but instead of like darkness, it's now a massive vision of this white mask. And then the three of them snap out of the trance that they were in, and they're back in the chamber, and the priest is still there. Fern is like, "What was that?" And the priest says that they're in a period of mourning for one of their own. The three of them then make their leave, and all the groups reconvene at the Spire by Fire, and each catch each other up on what they just went through, basically. And the party realizes that Ludinus has been 20 steps ahead of them the whole time. They know that the shadowy orb figure was connected to Keyleth, and that seemed to be like part of the whole plan, was to get her there to lure him out, and they've just been like patsies in all of this. There's then another, patented God conversation amongst the whole group, like, are they good? Are they bad? Where does everybody stand on this? And they kind of realize that each of them is kind of bringing their own perspective and has their own ideology on this, but even still, they can all work together because, like, at the very least, they can all agree that like lewdness needs to be stopped. Um, and basically come to the conclusion that the general idea of like, are the gods good or bad, is not black and white. The party then decides to just rest for the night, but before they do, F.C.G and Fern each scry. With F.C.G is going to check on Liliana and Fern Ludinus. Ludinus, however, does have the scry prevention, so it doesn't work. Liliana does not, though, so it does work. And F.C.G gets a vision of Liliana in this massive red storm, and she is walking towards something. And next to her is, in fact, Ludinus, and they are headed toward what appear to be like structures in the distance. But FCG notices in the sky a bluish teal marble, and he realizes that it's Exandria, therefore realizing that they are on the moon. Comes out of this, tells everybody else, and they're like, oh gosh. And basically, the party goes to sleep for that night. The next morning, Imogen doesn't get enough charges back on her staff, so they still can't teleport today. So they got another day of kind of dilly-dallying. FCG identifies the harness and finds out that it like funnels magic directly into the user's spine. Ashton returns to Milo, who hasn't slept as they've been working on this hammer the whole time, and Milo does finish it, and we'll probably talk about this more during the discussion, but looks really cool and seemingly has an immovable rod installed in it now. Orem then uses Caleb's sending stone to see if that works, but he still can't get through. Imogen decides to cast sending herself to check in on Ira, but it also fails. And FCG then decides, let me just scry on Ira, but that also fails. So Fern is like, well, let me try to scry on Ira. And she is actually successful. And she sees him in the middle of a massive red storm. He is also on Ruidus. And he is approaching this like big rock or big structure. It's kind of obscured by the storm, and he like makes his way inside of it. And inside there's another figure that looks like a Raylora, except they're more humanoid, more like corporeal.
Jacked.
Yeah, they're not just like the pure energy that we've seen before. Instead, it's like a living, breathing entity, and it's wearing clothing and armor. And it regards Ira with recognition, and they seem to be communicating telepathically. The party then rests again for the night, so Imogen can get her staff charges back. The next morning comes, she does get those back, and they gather to teleport and successfully make their way to Zephyra, and that is where the episode ends. Again, episode 65 of Campaign 3, Path of Vengeance, Path to Vengeance, something like that. But yeah, if you want to hear our full discussion, which we're about to launch into, it'll be linked down in the description below.
Good stuff, man. A meaty episode.
Yeah, great episode, man. I really loved this episode. There was meaty is a great way to describe it. There's just so much, you know?
Yeah,
So
there's a lot. There's a lot to discuss for sure. Kind of another prep episode, and yet so many things happened. Um, where to begin? I mean,
Yeah, I was just, we obviously had the reunion episode last time, but all the guests were there. It was the 10-person table. So this was something I was kind of hoping we would still get, is because, they
mhm,
did reunite and kind of all catch up, but
right.
there were guests in the house, so mom and dad couldn't really, have
Yeah,
their full-fledged
yeah,
convo. So I love that the start, like just right from the start, there was like a really great conversation with Team AOL and specifically Laudna kind of helming this,
yeah,
being like, you guys had like a theme park experience
yeah,
and like we went through hell.
yeah,
Um, so you and I have talked about it. The whole community's talked about like the two vastly different experiences. So I'm really glad that that got explored.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, just so much good RP this episode.
yeah. I guess let's like hit on like the small stuff first before we
Okay.
get to the meaty stuff. Um, Ashton, I don't know if it's a subclass feature that he's hinting towards, or if it's actually like a something that he just wanted created. But this adjustment to his hammer, his gravity hammer, I guess. You made the comment of perhaps an immovable rod built into it. Um, Definitely would fit the flavor of his class. Uh, where did he pick up this note, by the way? Like when he says like, or the design, like where did that come from? Or
I I don't know. I was thinking that it was maybe just in character Ashton,
yeah, okay,
like, this is the idea that I
yeah, yeah,
have. Can you make
okay,
this a reality?
okay,
If there is like something Ashton actually picked up somewhere, then it escapes me and I
yeah.
missed it.
No, that's what I thought too. But then I was wondering, like, was there a moment that he lifted something, like from the temple in a Silra or something? But okay, yeah. So yeah, something cool. And of course, I left all the party asked, and he was like, "Oh no, you're just gonna have to
Yeah, you're gonna have to
wait and
see.
see."
But that isn't
Yeah,
it. I didn't think about it in the way you saw it, is that it might be tied to like the subclass,
yeah,
which would be interesting because I was thinking it's just like a magic item, but I guess it would be, I don't know,
yeah,
but that would make sense if it was tied to that. But maybe it is.
yeah,
I mean, I guess it could be either way.
yeah.
But he essentially is making Mjolnir. Like, you got the immovable rod, so you could like seemingly hold things down
Yeah,
with it, and he also attached the not residuum. I don't know if we have an official
yeah,
name for that,
yeah. I
which
think yeah, not
AOE
residuum.
spells.
Yeah,
So like, I'm not saying he's gonna
yeah,
literally cast lightning, but like
yeah.
very
It's pretty
Mjolnir.
cool for sure. He does have like the chaos burst or something,
Yeah,
so it
yeah,
could be cool if it's like a AOE effect or something. But
yeah.
and then Ashton in general, we had that cool conversation with him and F.C.G, but then a follow up conversation. I think after the break when they were talking about the gods, and he talked a little bit about his backstory again and talked about how his parents were like ripped to shreds, which I think was interesting because I didn't know if we were going to see F. Terran again, which we may or may not. But as Ashton perceives it, parents ripped to shreds, never heard anything from the gods until you know 10 days before when one of the gods tried to kill him. Um, so yeah, a little bit of I guess both flavors of Ashton, kind of like the trauma side and the optimistic side. He's been through it for sure.
Yeah, I love this. I think this is such an interesting and great like character development and arc, cuz like not everyone in Bell's Hells, but if I can generalize, Bell's Hells is like losing themselves. They all are like, they don't know what to do. They're all conflicted with like their previous worldviews.
Hmm.
Um but conversely, Ashton has like solidified, like this has given him purpose, and it's like the first time they've felt meaning. And I just really
Hmm.
love that, like, everyone else is kind of lost and Ashton's stepping up. So
Yeah.
I just, I think I wrote down something specifically. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Oh yeah, he says, I don't want to be worthless. I don't want to lose what I have. I usually don't have things to lose, but now I do. So I
Hmm.
like that, like, like, I don't know. I've already said it, so I won't keep repeating myself. But I just really love how Ashton's stepping up in the face of everyone else falling apart.
Yeah, I love how you put it that way. It's an interesting balance with Orem really early on in the campaign of him kind of telling everyone like to get it together because everyone like had like their issues. But you're right, everyone's kind of lost their footing a bit, Orem especially. And it's been really cool. We saw several episodes ago, probably 15 or more at this point, of Ashton, essentially taking over the dad role from Orem,
Yeah.
checking out on Orem. Hey, how you doing? Take care of yourself. Checking in on Laudna. Um, Notably was the one who sort of like guided Laudna away after Border was killed.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, is yeah, he's my favorite, man. He's just he's so cool.
Yeah, and I feel like it's such a great. I guess I'm just repeating myself. Just such a great character arc for him because
Mhm.
again, he was this closed off kind of cold, or not cold, but like had all the walls up, you
Yeah,
know.
little bit of bravado or
Right.
whatever.
And now that they actually have something to lose, like that's the impetus. Like it's like, okay, it's time to get my shit together. Like I'm
Yeah,
not gonna let this group fall apart. Like I'm not gonna
yeah.
be left alone again. So yeah, just big fan of this whole development. And
Mhm.
I this is kind of leading into another discussion, which I don't know if we want to go there necessarily yet, but I'm kind of worried about like what's going to happen with this group because the whole, the God conversation again, they kind of all realize they all have different perspectives on it. And I don't think that there's gonna be like PvP and they end up killing each other. Like I don't really see it getting to that point, but
Maybe.
I do see at least in the tea leaves, if you will, like some conflict. Now I don't know what that necessarily materializes into.
Yeah.
Um, but I could see like a fracturing point. But again, I don't know like if I can be like above the table in meta, it's not as if someone's gonna leave the table or like get so I don't really know how to like what I think that might materialize into, but I definitely see
Has there been a time
some
in
friction.
CR's history where the party has been so disjointed in terms of like I think they all agree on like let's save the world side of things, but there definitely feels like there's some real opportunity for not just friction but fracturing. Um, we talked about Orm kind of falling away from like Team God, but then in this episode, he was the one who sort of like defended the gods and said like, "Hey, I know they're not pretty, but like they've done a lot of good in the world."
Right.
We got kind of the similar comments of like, "Don't care about the gods, just here to help people." I'm really interested, not to mention the conversation with Laudna and Imogen, where I think the start of the campaign Delilah would have been viewed as like, get this as far away from me as possible. And Laudna even kind of a bit curious of utilizing Delilah. And then Imogen following that up with like, yeah, I don't know, the power's really tempting. I mean, if I'm Orem, I'm clock. I mean, he's not there obviously, but clocking that for sure based on the previous conversations of kind of being worried about Imogen.
Yeah.
I don't think there'll be PvP either, but I also would not be surprised because I do think, like I said earlier, it's not just friction. I think there could be a real fracturing point in some way. Oh, and what I was going to, actually going back to what I was originally saying, has there been a time in CR where this has been the case?
There's been inter-party conflict, certainly, but I wouldn't say to such an important like
Story point.
question, like like such a like a this is like the linchpin of the whole story really so far, at
Right.
least in C3. um so like there hasn't, I say with there hasn't been anything like this, but that's it doesn't really tell you much, I guess. But um this does feel novel in some ways. But yeah, again, yeah, I don't know what to. I definitely feel the friction too, but I really like I don't see it. I don't know. I think ultimately like there could be friction and there could be conflict, but nothing like serious. But I
Mhm.
don't know. I mean, I do think that I don't want to like shift gears completely. But yeah, the I loved Orem speaking up again here and explaining that like, some of the gods are bad, sure, but a lot of them are good, and a lot of the good ones have done a lot of good.
Mm,
And basically, it's just not black and white. Like we shouldn't wipe out all of them because there's a few bad
yeah.
apples. Which I like.
Well,
I just feel like that is a point that needed to be brought up
yeah.
more in this discussion. Um,
Forgot you're a huge God simp. So Orem also in this conversation, I loved his conversation at the Dusk Maven Temple. Like the prayer he said, like I don't remember the phrase, but it was like, I'm like adrift here. Like I need some help. Like really. And I kind of just felt bad for him. I just thought, man, he's just really trying to cling on to something.
yeah,
And I don't know. I mean, and I don't know if necessarily the vision provided that grounding that he was looking for. I It did make sense him making that prayer, considering that the Wild Mother, which I would argue was his god previously, or like his tether, he's made a couple of like fervent prayers to like no response. Um, and so it makes sense to see him kind of like at another deity, like, give me something, please. Um, but yeah, I mean, I just feel bad for the guy.
yeah. I'm curious to see what this trip to Zephyra does for him. Like,
Hmm.
is it going to be a good thing? And like a refreshing thing to maybe see some of his loved ones. Like Will's family, which I think he considers his family,
Didn't he
basically.
have a sister too?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
um, and to see Keyleth, but I don't. I think it will be good to see his family and stuff, unless something terrible has happened that we just haven't. He hasn't
Mm.
gotten wind of yet. But that aside, I think it'll be good for him to see the family. But it might be. I don't know. Keyleth, last we saw, are looking rough, and they're gonna. Okay, I want to talk about the Keyleth and the Vax stuff, but I don't want specifically on Orem right now. Keyleth might be like not the beacon of hope that he may like be expecting her, like, like if he's going, it's like,
Yeah.
okay, now we can talk to her, she's gonna like have a plan
Yeah.
and we can get back
Yeah.
on track. Like she might not be that right now, so that
Right.
might like make him even more dejected, like, what do we
Yeah.
do? um
I do like that they're going there versus the original plan of like, let's go back to the excavation site. Like
yeah,
this makes a lot more sense than just like rushing headlong into that. Um, it also creates a bit of a buffer timeline wise, because I guess they're gonna have to wait another day or two
yeah, to
to
get
teleport
the
again.
yeah.
And so that gives, I guess, the armies some time to make their way to the excavation site. Let's go ahead and talk about Keyleth and Vax. A
uh,
crazy vision.
yeah, that was nuts, man. And
Felt
I
bad for Vax, dude.
no, man, it's constantly screaming across all of Exandria, like, bad enough that he got turned into the orb. It's like a continually excruciating process, I guess. Which,
Yeah, I mean, what a bummer of a fate too. And I was unsettled by the kind of implied permanence of it, like the temple priest being like, "Yeah, we're mourning the loss of one of our own."
yeah,
Um, I don't know. I just was unsettling. Like, surely they're gonna free Zach, Vax, right? I mean, I don't
Vex and
know.
Zack. Yeah, I mean, I hope so. I almost looked at it as like not necessarily a call to action like for Bell's Hell specifically to free him, but like the Raven Queen was like showing that like, hey, like I need help. Like,
Mhm.
which I thought this was interesting because one thing we've been wondering potentially is like, could the Raven Queen have any, like, did she know what was going to
Mhm.
happen to Vax, or like, her and Ludinus, could they have had any type of history? And they maybe still could, but this vision makes me think that, okay, like, no, she did not
Mhm.
want that to happen to Vax or know that was going to happen to Vax, unless this is like a double bluff type of scenario.
I think where I've landed, because there's still like the weirdness around the Ruby Vanguard worshiping her. I think where I've landed is it's the theme of like admiring someone who stood up to the gods,
Yeah.
basically, which I think checks out a bit better for me now compared to before. It was like, okay, but why her? Like, what's going on here? Um, so
Yeah. So, uh, yeah, to me, it answered that question of, is she in on it in any type of way? And I don't
yeah.
think so. And then two, it made me kind of glad that she is at least, again, not that that was a personal call to action for Bell's Hells, but that tells me that like she's working on it, or she at least like wants this to be fixed. Since that's what she drew their attention to. And I mean, I guess you could also say that like freeing Vax may also kind of have the added effect of stopping whatever Ludinus is doing, like potentially, like
Mm.
even though the pathway to Ruidus is open, maybe it's too late, like maybe the damage is done, but also like if they can destroy that Malleus key, maybe that is beneficial to all
Mm.
of the gods, in
Yeah.
addition to freeing Vax. But yeah, I mean, he's at least still alive, if I can use that in quotes, considering he's screaming. But yeah, the fact that they said we're in mourning, it made me wonder too, like what is this salvageable for him
Mhm.
in any type of
Yeah.
way? Just rough, man. Vax has had a rough go of it.
Did you have more you wanted to say about Vax and Keyleth?
Um, just that I'm really interested to see what we might see. We know that
Mhm.
Keyleth was reaching out to people, so could we have other members of Vox Machina and Zephyr right now, but perhaps see some of the ones we haven't seen yet this campaign? Um, and just like what they're gonna do. It'll be interesting to see if like, and I don't want to get into. I mean, there's some explicit spoilers, kind of obvious in general, but I don't want to get into campaign one spoilers. Um, but I'm just interested to see like where her priorities are. Like, is she gonna be like, we have to help Vax, or if it's
Mhm.
like there's all these fires, like I need to like, and plus she's injured, so maybe she can't even do much. But like if I don't know, I'm just curious to see like where her priorities are and what like her plan is as
Yeah.
far as what to tackle.
Moving on to another smaller story point. The bounty hunter after
Yeah.
Chetney. I
Yeah.
love that there was this follow up. And when we talked about this episode, we both were like, this was pretty brutal. For you guys who maybe you haven't followed the campaign too closely, and Chetney described it as much, they were in a shopping episode really early on in the campaign, very early on. And Chetney went to the shopkeeper's store and was going to buy some wooden chisels. And the shopkeeper said the price, which was implied to be overpriced. But later that night, Chetney went away and broke into this person's store and didn't just intimidate. I think I remember like him like brutally attacking the person or something, like clawing their leg or something, or
he,
you know, it's
de-
like,
he definitely did damage, like
yeah,
for sure.
it wasn't like, you know, hey, you shouldn't do this anymore. It was like vigilanteism to the nth degree,
Yeah.
and then like rushed off into the wilderness or into the night, excuse me. So presumably this is I actually when the bounty hunter first showed up, I thought it was a reference to Gurge saying like, hey, if you bite someone, like we'll track you down. So him biting Frida, I was thinking there's no way they could know. Like how, but then I thought maybe they do. Maybe they keep tabs of on all their werewolves, I guess. So this makes a little bit more sense to me now.
Yeah.
But yeah, nice little callback, I guess. And I feel like Matt's always so good at consequences for your actions kind of
Yeah.
details.
Yeah,
So
agreed. Yeah, I really liked this callback as well. And yeah, I was thinking the same as you regarding the what was the name? Do you remember?
I don't know. Oh, of the shopkeeper or the bounty hunter?
No, the oh sorry, the that like order that comes in.
Oh yeah,
Was it
the
the yeah, yeah,
claret
yeah.
order.
Yeah. I was thinking
Yeah,
it was them too, but yeah, seemingly just that shopkeeper put a bounty on his head.
yeah.
Um which cool that they're like catnip for werewolves, I guess.
Yeah.
That was
It's in the
interesting.
lore now.
Yeah. And
Go ahead.
I also liked just Fern, who's, typically the bubbly kind of, just, I guess bubbly is a good way to put it. Not the most serious, very playful, and like um just immediately casts blight. Like when Chetney,
Yeah.
or one of her friends rather, is just in
Yeah.
danger. I just liked the hard switch of like, when it's time to get down to business, it's time.
Yeah.
Um but yeah, that's I think that's all I've got on that little
Okay.
tidbit.
Another tiny detail. We had the conversation with Ajit Dial about a lot of things actually. On Corel, notably, a
Right.
reference to the Stratus Throne, which for you guys, there's been mention of the Apex War in prior history, which was between, I think, Oncorel and the Stratus Throne, or Stratus Throne and maybe the rest of Marquette. I'm not quite sure. But
It
then
was it
also
was
this,
it was Drusar, I think, and but that might
okay,
yeah, but that might be like
yeah,
just the capital city of each location. But yeah, sorry.
yeah. The comment around enchantments breaking and certain prisoners who were in prison through enchantments that were now free. I thought we were going to get a little peek at maybe what the live show was going to be about, but
Mm.
we got a nice little callback to this open thread, the Ivory. We
Ivory
did this. We
Syndicate.
always do this. He wants to say the Immortal Syndicate, the Ivory Syndicate, which was referenced in the first few episodes of this campaign and then never came up again. I kind of just took it as Matt. It was a potential story thread that the players just didn't pursue, and it kind of like wisped away, I guess. But I do like that Matt brought it back and brought this little detail back, which is just a great recycling as the DM, I guess. But the leader of the Ivory Syndicate, who is now presumably free, and I'd be interested to see how and if that comes back into the story again.
Yeah, I thought that was definitely interesting. And it also kind of, the fact that the leader was imprisoned could kind of explain the lack of Ivory
Right.
Syndicate activity in that early part of the campaign. Um but yeah, I very curious about that as well. I'm just in general curious about other things that are happening right now, because clearly the Prodothos Ludinus situation is priority numero uno. Like, a lot's at stake with that. So for sure, that's like what needs to be tackled and addressed. But there's definitely a lot of other things going on. Not only like other people that wanted to take advantage of the apogee solstice and whatever they're doing, but now people that want to take advantage of this situation of like the world being in chaos and some magic not working.
Mm.
Um, not that we're going to get anything about this necessarily, but just like Levtonia, for example, the leader of the Ivory Syndicate, who's now out of prison in this tumultuous, like everything's on fire situation. Like, what plans might they be cooking up? Like,
Mhm. Yeah.
and not that it's related. I don't think it is related. But speaking back to all of the like the broomstone that was stolen in the earlier campaign, like, could there be other things that just start popping off everywhere because of
Yeah.
opportunists?
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously, the story that we're going to be focused on is the whole lewdness thing. So I don't expect us to go on like a side quest to, prevent Levtonia from robbing a bank. But just because this is such like a living, breathing world, I'm interested to see like what kind of moves and shifts during this
Mhm.
time that, a lot of attention is going to be elsewhere. So people are going to be able to get away with things.
Yeah. Any other details on their conversation with him?
Um, just the harness, which I guess it wasn't in
Oh,
this
right.
conversation. It was more so, I guess, F.C.G later, but I'll go ahead and knock
Yeah.
this out.
Identifying it. Yeah.
Um, I just thought it was interesting that we got like the explicit detail that it like goes into the top of the spine or whatever.
I could have sworn they casted Identify on it
Like
previously.
earlier. Yeah, I thought they did
Yeah.
too.
I'm
But maybe it
pretty
was
sure
like,
they did, but
yeah, maybe it was a situation where like they'd already identified something else and then never
yeah.
remembered to come back. But yeah, they at least earlier gleaned the whole like it sucks magic energy out of people. But anyway, I was just curious if like that could potentially be like a weak spot on Ludinus if that encounter ever happens. I mean, clearly he's not wearing the harness, but if he has like a new iteration, like if
Mhm.
he that was like a prototype, it would just be, I don't know. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it's just a cool detail, but I thought that was an interesting explicit detail to paint for Matt to be like, yeah, between the shoulders, top of the spine, infuses you with magic. So I don't know.
Interestingly enough, what's her face has something similar.
Wait, who?
The I can't think of her name. The leader of the Paragon's Call.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Odahan?
Odahan, yeah.
Yeah.
Odahan has a
The
something similar in the sense
jet.
of
Yeah.
source of power on her back.
Right.
That one's more dunamantic, presumably. But maybe there's a connection. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, seems like there definitely could be.
Um,
Um,
go ahead.
yeah. But yeah, nothing else with Ajit.
Okay. I think that's my last small detail. I don't know if you have another one before we move on
Let
to some of
me
the juicier
let me
stuff.
scroll through real quick. Um, the Corsairs being conscripted by the Mahan houses was
Yeah.
interesting. I couldn't
Yeah.
remember.
I forgot about them.
Yeah, I couldn't remember exactly what left off with them. Like I couldn't remember if they were on good terms, bad terms, no
I have no
terms.
idea. I don't think they
Um,
had any terms. I think they had the meeting and then Dorian's brother was one of them, right?
that's right. Yeah.
And then they went off to the ball and then that was it.
Okay.
Never went back to him.
Which is interesting though, because weren't like the Corsairs, weren't they
If I'm
like?
thinking of the same group, I don't know. I think that's them, right?
Yeah, yeah. That was it. Was Dorian's brother was one, so
Yeah.
it's that group for sure. They were kind of like, I'm not saying they were all virtuous. They definitely weren't all virtuous, but weren't they
They were
kind of like
they were
Robin Hood
rare.
esque?
Yeah.
Like, wasn't that like
Yeah.
their, at least their idea of themselves?
Yeah. They were
Um,
definitely gray for sure.
so it's interesting that they're working for the Bahan houses. I mean, I guess paycheck's a paycheck, but like you would think that those were like a lot of the people they had a problem with initially. Like the
Yeah, that's a good
rich
point.
upper
Yeah.
crust of society.
Yeah.
Um, but hey,
I
I
mean, maybe
mean,
maybe the Mahan houses aren't all equal. I mean, the Ludinus twins house versus like the Treshy house, are probably very different.
yeah,
Um, so
yeah, for sure. Yeah, not to say that all the Mahans are bad or anything, but they're definitely like the wealthy, influential
yeah,
people.
for sure, for
Um,
sure. Yeah, yeah,
but again, the world's ending. These people are offering good money. Maybe you just got to do what you got to do. But that was an interesting detail to like include.
yeah,
Um, Another small thing was the the orb or whatever it was that Ludinus was like projecting out of to give his little
yeah.
speech. Very reminded me a lot of Avalier. Like
Mm.
not to say that like it literally was Avalier, but like Age of Arcanum. And again, not to
Hmm.
say that like that orb itself was like an ancient artifact or anything, but it just made me think of, because I feel like Brennan described that in Avalier of like all the different like holographic
Yeah, I think it
screens
was
and
how Sam's character, how they reported like the news or what have you. It was something like
yeah.
that, I think. So speaking of lewdness, did we? I feel like we knew he had the shriveled hand, right? Like, wasn't there something?
Yeah,
He
it's when
was
he
like powering
activated the
the.
Malleus key, it like took his hand in response or whatever.
I don't know why I love that flavor detail of this like just choked out hand.
There is a cost.
So
Yeah.
anyway, maybe that's like a good starting point for like the meaty stuff.
Yeah.
Liliana and Ludinus, they're on the moon,
They're
it
on the
seems,
moon, man.
along with Ira, presumably as well. Not necessarily together, but um, yeah. What? I
I
guess
mean,
this tether between Ruidus and Exandria is like some kind of like teleportation thing of some kind. Since we know it seems like Ray Laura were coming down from the city.
yeah. Seems like some sort of elevator for sure, which which maybe, I mean, obviously the Malleus Key has done a number of things, but you know, in terms of talking about like, is it too late? Like, is it already in motion now and it can't, and what like Prodathos can't be stopped, or can it still be stopped, yada yada yada. Maybe the Malleus Key thing was just to like lock it in place and like offer a way to get there, and now there is
Yeah,
still like a excavation or like an unsealing or something that needs to be
right.
done on Ruidus to like finish this ritual. And so that's my best guess as of right now, and so I'm assuming that Liliana and Ludinus are like heading into that city to further that goal somehow.
Mhm. What what did you make of Ira meeting with one of the
Bro,
Raylora?
all I gotta say is I knew it. All right. I
What do you mean
mean,
you knew it?
I don't remember the episode, but I remember specifically saying that there's another piece on this chessboard that we're not paying attention to, and that it was Ira, and that he just had something up his sleeve. And this just, I mean,
I feel
listen,
like this wasn't the smoking gun you're looking for. I mean, he's an agent of chaos. I mean, he sees an opportunity to, bamf up to the moon. He's, probably going to take that.
yeah, but he has familiarity with this humanoid Ray Laura. Like, it's definitely more than just let me check this out. Like,
Yeah.
I think, I mean, we knew that he was the original designer of the Malleus key. Like, he definitely knew more than he ever let on and had his own plans for this. And I
Yeah.
feel like that's confirmed by this scene. But
Did you did you take it to mean the Raylora he's meeting with was like, because I kind of envision all the Raylora being pretty pissed off. They've been like locked on Ruidus and just being like, you know, Ludinus, we're here for you. Lead us to victory. But I almost got kind of like an impression of like, not like a separate sect, but at least some kind of tiny. I'm still not sure of like the allegiances here, and if this person is someone that Ira's been, because we know when they first looked at the telescope with Fern's parents that they saw the city, he was like, "That's interesting." Maybe presumably made contact in some way since then, and maybe he and this one Ray Laura have some plans that are separate from what Ludinus wants to accomplish. I don't really know. I don't know what to make of it.
yeah, I don't know either. So there's a couple things that you said there that I want to address. As far as like the different sects, I feel like there could be. I don't know if this is relevant or not, but I feel like I remember. I don't remember where it came up or who was in the conversation besides Imogen, but there was some description about how like each Ray Laura is different. Like some of them are nice, you know, and some of them might be angry.
Mm.
You know what I'm talking about? Do you
Yeah,
remember
we were talking about it was the notes from the professor on the experiments with Liliana, I think,
that?
as she was like tapping into the Ray Laura.
So again, not that that means that just means they have different personalities, but that could therefore mean then that they're not all just Team Ludinus necessarily. Maybe they are different allegiances or whatever. But yeah, I like the idea that after the telescope thing, that could have been when the
Hmm.
Nightmare King, you know, started delving deeper. But I'm still on team. He knew long before that even, because
Maybe, yeah.
I think he's ancient, just like Ludinus is, and I don't know if these necessarily tie together, but I'm also almost all the way in on that being the Tishtan city, and maybe the Ray Laura being the Tishtans, and maybe they,
Oh,
you know, just Predathos
wow.
has twisted them into what they are now. And if that is the case, then the Nightmare King could have a relationship with them dating back to the early days, you know.
Yeah,
Um, so yeah.
that's yeah, that's really interesting. Um,
so,
huh.
so yeah,
Yeah, that'd be really interesting for sure. I'm just reading about them on the wiki, but
so yeah, I still don't know what Ira's plans would be necessarily. I definitely think he's like a maverick, you know. He's got his own ideas and goals here. But I'm just curious as to what those would be. Like maybe I don't know.
Yeah.
Wait. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
very interesting
Hmm.
to see that play out. I got excited. Um,
Another exciting moment, man. Imogen and Ladna, they're just best friends, you know?
yeah, I'm surprised we got took this long to get to this.
Yeah.
um,
They're just the sweetest of
there's
roommates.
the best of friends.
Yeah.
But yeah,
There was some YouTube video I saw that it was from forever ago. It was like episode 20, but it was like Imogen and Ladna are just friends, and like it was like all like and they had like pulled like little details that like made it seem like they had something happening with someone else.
mhm.
And then the top comment was like last week. It was like this aged so incredibly poorly for you.
Wait, so it
Was
was
the top
like
comment.
not a joke, the video?
I think it might have
Like it was
been,
like
but like
tongue
the
in
person,
cheek, or was it like
it might have been, but like the person commenting, like people had come back to this video though
oh,
to
okay.
be
I
like, okay, all right. So
was gonna
anyway,
say, man, what
yeah,
yeah, I the question has finally been answered. I mean, you
it's
know.
still up for debate though. You know, there were people like in olden days who greeted each other with a kiss. You
Yeah, yeah,
know, I
for
mean,
sure. For sure.
expression of love. So
But yeah, I
yeah,
mean
the question has been answered. I don't dislike it. I don't dislike it. I will say I really liked where we had landed previously. I mean, this just makes more sense. Like it's just cleaner in general. But I also liked where we had landed previously of this like soul binding connection that wasn't necessarily romantic. Um, which, like I said, the way it plays out just makes sense. Um, but I guess now they have both, right? They have the soul binding connection and the romance side of it. But definitely a moment I think many people were. You could see it at the table, right? Like people were like, "Is this really happening right now?"
yeah.
So I did see a joke about either Laudna or Imogen, like the number of players at the table that they've fallen in love with or something.
yeah.
So anyhow,
Somebody made like an infographic that categorized all the romances. Um but yeah, I mean, you know that I've long been a proponent of the not giving myself a pat on the back here. I think, almost everyone thought this, but that they were eventually, they had feelings, let's put it that way. But yeah,
yeah,
then recently there was some doubt cast on that of maybe they are just maybe it's not romantic. But to your point, I think, you said now they have both. And I think yes, that's true, and I think both could kind of be true. Like I think what
right.
they had is what you described, and at the time it wasn't romantic because
Yeah, maybe it evolved is maybe a fair word, or it continued to grow. I guess continue. I don't mean to interrupt you.
yeah, but just also that like I think that like they had those feelings obviously, but just never acted on them for a million reasons. And we know that Laudna in particular is like a corpse essentially. I mean, she's not, but you know what I mean. Um so like I'm sure Laudna like wouldn't even allow herself to like consider
Yeah,
like having that. So I think there were like a lot of um aspects at play here, and then just like two broken people like not wanting themselves or thinking they're worthy, or like thinking that that can happen. I think that was like a lot of the dam blocking the river essentially. So yeah, I don't know what I'm talking about, but I think they can have both, and both can be true. um
saw some people talking about Imogen's line. I don't know if it's okay anymore, like implying that
yeah.
maybe they had. I don't know. Maybe they had like maybe fooled around is probably not the right phrasing, but like there was something prior to this moment, which I don't know if I go that route. That kind of my intention. I don't know honestly what to make of that line. We know that she couldn't read her mind, which I think was a bit of the source of that line. But I did see this theory that people were chatting about that it's the first open moment we've seen. I don't know. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I was wondering about that line too. And I actually like that element of this too, that the true moment of like facing the feelings happened when she couldn't read her mind. It just feels better that way,
Yeah.
you know? Like
Yes.
it's I don't really know what my like how to materialize what I'm trying to say into words, but I really liked that. More vulnerable, more real, more like
Yeah.
I don't know. But yeah, I don't think that I was wondering about this line too. I don't think that the implication is that they've fooled around to whatever that you want to call that, even if it's just like a
Yeah.
kiss.
Yeah.
I don't think that it because that doesn't check out to me, especially with everything else we were just talking about of like how it led up to this. It doesn't make sense to me that they would have ever done anything like that before and still felt all the ways they felt up until this point. And maybe it was just like not something like like maybe Imogen heat of the moment like wasn't like the words maybe weren't
Yeah. Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah.
Like maybe she
Right.
was referencing like I just can't read your mind anymore.
Yeah.
But one thing I thought was interesting was like if Imogen did like want to make a move or kiss her in the past, and so like she would probe in to be like, what if is Laudna thinking about kissing me right now? If there was
Uh,
like something like that,
yeah.
which if that is the case, and this is like I'm going pretty into ambiguous territory here, but it's interesting to think about. I don't know if it's all right anymore that potentially she would have done that in the past and would have realized that Laudna would have been acceptive, but then she still never tried until this
Mm,
moment. Um,
yeah.
but yeah,
Mm.
I I thought it was great. The table reacting to it was great. It really reminded me of campaign 1 in particular, just because that was the first. And so the first romance in campaign 1, they're all like most of them like couldn't watch because they were like just thought were like so embarrassed and thought it was so funny. They kind of had a similar reaction here where like Marisha like got up out of her chair. I don't know if you saw on the Critical Role TikTok, they posted like a little snippet, I guess, of I guess it was maybe after the session, or I don't know. But they were all still freaking out. Like Marisha was like crying, and Laura said like, "I'm sorry I didn't like tell you before. Like I'm sorry I didn't like run this
Oh,
by you." So this was like
yeah.
obviously they've had
Yeah.
conversations clearly, but like at least so far as like, hey, I might kiss you tonight, like that was not talked about. So it truly did catch Marisha off guard, and I just thought it was fun that it was such like an organic moment in that
Yeah,
way.
because Marisha's reaction was so okay. Yeah, it was just great. But you know what else though? Laura was on a tear of just improv too, because there was also the conversation around their sources of power, I guess. And um Laudna said something like, maybe it's our destiny to always fight to have these things that we're dealing with. And Imogen said something like, maybe it's our destiny to fight them or something like that. I don't remember what it was, but it was such like a like bounced back line, like playing off of Laudna's line, that you saw like Laura almost was like smiling as she said it, because I think she probably knew how good of a line it was, but you saw everyone else at the table just like, ooh, that was so good.
Yeah.
So those improv moments, yeah, I definitely think it's interesting from like a D&D perspective. Like it feels like there is like this give and take of like what you play off with other party members and things like that. But I think we've talked about this before. It's probably not worth parking on, but the table has such high trust that it kind of makes sense that these moments happen, and it's what makes it all the more sweeter, I guess, when they finally do.
Yeah. 100%. I mean, Laura freaking Bailey, man. That's all you got to say, really.
Yeah, she's my favorite.
Same.
So yeah. Okay. What else?
Um, let me do a quick scroll through, but I think we hit the biggest things. Um,
I feel like there was something else. Let me see here. Could have sworn there was.
I, I mean, we basically already have talked about it at various other points, but I feel like there's I don't know. I feel like there's other shoes to drop of things that are going to happen that aren't related to this. Like, I don't know. Like, is the Stratos throne going to pull a move while they think that,
Right.
Drusar's weak or something? It was cool
Oh,
to get
interesting.
the
Yeah.
Jamansa Ord reference. That's somebody that popped up in campaign 1. Um,
Oh, really? Wow.
mhm. So,
Cool.
yeah, just now they did
I think
say, do you remember uh was the Stratos throne one of the parties that was mentioned that was like there having all come together? Like
no,
what,
I don't think so.
they weren't there?
I don't think so.
Okay. That makes me even more suspicious.
Yeah. We know, let me actually pull up the wiki before I say anything. Because we know the Apex War ended in a stalemate.
Yeah, basically, I think like
And I don't remember which side. Oh, wait, this doesn't even involve. Oh, this doesn't even involve Drusar, though, or Ank'Harel. It was between the Stratos throne of the Talon Highlands and the court of the Lambent Path of the Ashanador, which both of those things are on the southern side of Marquette. Um,
oh, so
and
Drusar wasn't
Drusar,
involved.
yeah, right. Um, but we know that Ara fought for one side. Yeah, it says here neither Ank'Harel or Drusar were involved in the war.
Okay. But yeah,
Let's see.
Odahan fought for the Stratus throne. That's where she got some of her notoriety, which also makes me suspicious of them. Like, which again, it feels like if there is some sort of plot here and the Stratos throne has partnered with Odahan, aka the Paragon's Call, and then aka Ludinus to some extent, it feels like they're cutting off their own nose to spite the face, Because like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, yeah, if you do get some gain out of this, what's the purpose if like the whole world's gonna end? But
Yeah,
I guess now that I'm saying that, at least in Ludinus's mind, the whole world's not gonna end. They're just gonna kill the gods.
yeah.
So I guess, and I know I'm making a lot of presumptions here, but hypothetically, if the Stratos throne was in cahoots with all those peeps, then I guess it would make sense because they think about to be a new world, about to be a new world order. Let's strike and cement our place and grow our land
Mm-hmm.
while the iron's hot.
Mm-hmm.
Now I say all of that, and maybe the Stratos throne was part of the alliance group meetup that happened, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
crazy. But I mean, I guess even if they were, that could just be a con.
Yeah, yeah, it could be.
But
I
yeah,
think I think regardless what happens, whether Matt follows on any of the or the party, I guess, follows on any of these threads or not, I like it purely from the fact that it lets us know that it's a living, breathing world and other
yeah,
things are happening. Even if they never come up again, there's other
yeah,
things happening, which I think is just a nice little, it's a tiny detail. For me as a DM, it's hard not to like want the players to follow those threads. But I think it shows Matt's experience of like, yeah, these are things that are happening and they just are. So
yeah. And I mean, again, with the current dilemma, they basically can't ignore
right.
the main
We're gonna
objective.
go, yeah.
But in other
There we go.
campaigns, Matt definitely did that, and then it was up to the players to like,
Yeah.
let's go down this path. So yeah, he's definitely, you know, obviously good at the whole DMing thing. Um,
Okay.
but yeah, I looked through my notes.
Um
I think we hit the big things that I wanted to.
yeah. I like how we said like let's hit the small things first, and then that was like almost everything. So anyway, yeah, let us know what you thought of the episode, guys. Theories for what comes next, and we might get a pretty big episode tonight with them and Zephyra.
Yeah,
But yeah,
and it's the last one before the break.
yep, yep. So okay, little thumbnail action.
Little thumb kneesy. Hmm.
I don't have a net lying around or a sex harness,
Maybe maybe
unfortunately.
maybe something like with the kiss.
How is that going to work with you and me?
Hint hint. No, I was thinking like the thumbnail. I would probably put. Uh,
I have I have a thumbnail, but it doesn't
oh,
really mesh with that
oh, I,
scene.
I didn't know you already did one. That's fine.
Well, it's from the vision they got. So all I say is if we do like a thumbnail that's kind of like F.C.G and Frida, where we're just like, it
Yeah.
might look kind of
Okay.
sadistic, I guess.
Okay.
But
So
that's,
so we need to be like,
yeah, yeah.
all right.
I guess it could work either way, you know. I didn't want to look too beaming for
Yeah, yeah.
a potentially sad thumbnail.
No, that
So,
works. That works.
okay. All
All
right,
right.
cool. All right.
Beautiful.
I suppose that does it then, friends.
Yeah, y'all. And if you've made it this far in the video, you already know this, but since I forgot to mention it earlier, check out the Discord. Like I said, it is Thursday, so it's Critical Role Night. We will be having our watch party, so come hang out.
We'll
Boom.
see you soon. That's it.
Bye, y'all.
Get out of here. Get out of here, guys. See you later.